What is up, guys? Thank you for tuning into another video brought to you by yours truly, the AFK developer. Today, we're going to be hosting a website. We're going to go from the beginning to the end. And what I mean by that is we're going to go from getting the server, putting Apache on it, getting the domain, pointing it at the server, and displaying our React application online. So we're going to use Apache, we're going to use Google Cloud Platform, and we're going to use a React application. And this is very important. This video is more geared towards people who want a better understanding of how it works to actually put your site up in production, and just the whole setup of how everything comes together to ultimately give you a website on the internet when you visit your domain. So stay tuned, watch till the end to get the most value out of this video. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications. I've been releasing content regularly. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so in the beginning of this video, I mentioned we're using Google Cloud Platform. Now the first thing we're going to want to do, obviously you should already have your application built in your development environment. You've already previewed it, tested it, and you're ready for it to go online. So we need to gather a few things. We need to gather the server, and we need to gather a domain, and then we need to set up those settings to make everything work and come together. So I mentioned we're using Google Cloud Platform. So this is me with a new Google account that I created because I already have an existing Google account that I'm using credits on. But for the sake of this tutorial, I made a new Google account, and we're going to visit the Google Cloud Platform. Now the deal with the Google Cloud Platform is you get $300 worth of free credits to start off with. And that's a pretty decent amount of credits. You can run your server for a pretty long time going on that if you have a decent sized server or a small server. Anyways, you have to fill out some basic information here, continue. You will be required to enter your credit card information, but no money will be taken from you until you spend your $300 credits. And even then, you could set up alerts to notify you when they're about to run out, so you can make adjustments and be prepared. But for example, I have a portfolio site that I've been running for 4 or 5 months on these free credits, and I still have more than half of my free credits left. So you can squeeze a good amount of time out of these free credits if you use them right. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this information in, and we'll meet at the end. Okay, so once we've got our free trial set up, we got our Google account or Google platform set up, we're going to be directed to this dashboard here. And this is the Google Cloud Platform dashboard. Like I said, this is what makes it so amazing, is all these options to basically do whatever you want. It's super simple without having to go and type any complicated commands in the command line, stuff like that. It has a user interface, managed firewall rules, which is amazing. So up at the top here, you're going to notice a thing called Select the Project. And I think by default, you get started with a My First Project. So I don't know why there's 2 of them here. Anyways, a project is just a way to group your stuff together. So if you have like multiple servers running in your Google Cloud Platform, and you have multiple clients and they have different servers, you might want to put them in different projects, so you can label it like Project A, Project B, and those would have the virtual machines that go with those projects. So we're just going to select on My First Project. And now what we're going to do is we're going to build a virtual machine. So the way we do that is on the left here in this menu, you go hover over Compute Engine and click on VM Instances. Once this loads up, I think when you do this for the first time, it takes a while to load up. So just be patient, let it load up. And then it might ask you to enable billing. Just click yes, got it, enable billing, and you should be able to create. Now we're just going to name this AFK Dev YT. So you get to select the region that you want your virtual machine in. I'm on the East Coast, so I think I'll select South Carolina. And the instance I'm going to be using is an E2 series, which is the cheaper one. Well, actually, let me see what we got here. Yep, E2 is the cheapest option, and it's a CPU platform selection based on availability. So we're going to select the machine type, and just for the purposes of this site, because it's only going to be just a basic React application, nothing too crazy, not expecting a bunch of traffic and connections all over the place. So we're not going to need too much memory and too much resources. So I'm just going to go to the small, which is right above micro, but a little bit underneath medium. So we're going to do the small, which comes with 2 gigabytes of memory, which is plenty for this example. And then we're going to have to select the OS. And I am always going to use Ubuntu. I'm going to go with the LTS version, the 20.04 LTS, which is amazing. And then we're going to select that. We're going to allow default access, and for our firewall we're going to want to allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic into our server so people can get to our site. The estimated cost of this would be $12.63 a month. Roughly, that's 17 cents an hour. So we have $300 free trial credits remaining. So if we boot this up, click create, and now our server is being created. So that was the first step to create the server. Now we're going to set up ways to easily get into the console. I'm going to generate an SSH key and show you how to make it so that you can access your console very easily every time. Okay, so now that we have our server created and set up on Google Cloud, we're going to need to access it. We're going to have to be able to access that command line to actually do useful stuff with it. So even though Google gives you all this cool fancy UI, it is still necessary to access the command line to do some things. So there's a few ways we can SSH in. We can use it through here, and we can access it in the browser like this. But right now, if you notice, we haven't set up any passwords or any users or anything like that yet. So I'm going to show you a way to SSH in with PARTI, and it's going to be literally just a one-click thing where you open up PARTI, you save your connection, and then you log in instantly every single time. So first thing we're going to do is create a key. We need to create a SSH key. So I have PARTI Gen downloaded, and if you don't have PARTI Gen on your computer, just go to the PARTI website and download PARTI, because you're going to need the client as well as the key generator. And then what we're going to do is we're going to generate a fresh key. Just hover over this. And this is our key right here that we're going to need. So I'm going to put the name of my account in the comment. So this is what I want my account name to be in Linux. This is what I want my user to be. So I'm going to take this code right here, copy this. I'm going to save my keys. I already have a directory right here that I created in my .ssh folder because I have different keys for different things. So I just have a directory right here, and I've already saved this, but I'm going to write over it basically. I always name my keys ID RSA. That's just like the generic name for them. So the first one's going to be a PPK file. That's your private key, and then the public key is just no file extension. Just save it as ID RSA. Just type that here, click save. In my case, I'm overwriting it. Okay, so that's good. We've copied this, which is the part of the key that we actually need right now. And we've saved both of them, so we can exit this. Let's go into our instance here. Remember, over here in Compute Engine, VM instances. So once we open this up, we're going to want to edit it because we're going to add this SSH key so that we can access our virtual machine very easily. So once we're in edit mode, scroll down. Right here where it says SSH keys, go to show and edit. I have 0 keys, but I'm going to paste that code that I copied from PuttyGen in here, and then I'm going to save. And what this does is it puts the key on the server, so now that when we try to log in with our Putty client and we use our private key, it will let us in. It won't ask us for a password, it will just let us go right in. So then the next step would be to open up Putty, the client. Oh, whoops. No idea what I did there. And once Putty's opened up, we're going to want to set this up. So let's make some space here. First thing we're going to need is the IP address for our new server. And that is going to be this right here, the external IP. So we could copy that here, go over to Putty, and our user, remember, is my user in my case is afkdevyt at, and then the IP address there. And of course we're going into SSH, so that's always going to be port 22. I'm going to save this session as afkdevyt. And remember, I'm just using afkdevyt for demonstration purposes. This can be whatever you want it to be, that you feel would be a good name to name your user and your server. So now we're going to want to put in the SSH key part. So we go to SSH, expand this, and go to auth. Let's browse. And then we add our private key here. This is where the private key goes. Once that's in there, we can go back to our session, and we have the name typed in here. You can save this, and now it's going to save it down here. This is a list of all the sites that I have access to, but the one that I just created is right here. So if we click open, this should work. And it does. So we're officially in. We're officially inside of our terminal right now. If you do an ls, there's nothing in this directory, but if you go back one and do an ls, you'll see that it created a user and it created a home directory for us. So we're afkdevyt. So that's our home directory and that's our user that we're using right now. I made afkdevyt home in a previous example when I was testing this, but we are going to be sticking to this one that I just created. And that's how we get easy access to our VM anytime, basically. If you want to access it on another machine, let's say you're on the road, or if you have your laptop, you can set it up with a key of its own, but basically the key is for the machine. So like every machine that you're connecting to your server with should have a different key to connect to your server. And you can add as many SSH keys as you want. But so for say if I want to access this server from here, my desktop PC, and then my laptop, I would have a key pair for my laptop and a key pair for my desktop. I wouldn't share those same keys with my laptop and my desktop. I'll just keep it separate. And that way, if my laptop gets stolen, I can just slash off that key, cut it off. That way nobody can access it with that key. So that sets us up for access. We're officially inside of our virtual machine. So this is a huge step. Now another thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we make this IP address static so that it never changes. Because right now it is not static. It can change. So we're going to go over here to the menu. Let me see if I can remember how to do this right off the top of my head. I believe it's in, yep, right here. VPC network, external IP addresses. Click on that. We have this external IP address here, and we're going to want to turn it from ephemeral, I think I said that right, to static. Name it, I'm just going to name it afkdevyt reserve. Boom. So we reserve this IP address. So this IP address is static. It will not change. We will not have to worry about having to repoint our domain at it, or being able to log into it because it's changed. And this is very important because when you have a website and you're pointing a domain at it, you need the IP address to stay the same all the time. So that's all set up. Our basics are set up with our server. We have access to our server now. We have a static IP address to our server now. We have our user automatically created with an SSH key on our server now. So let's go get the domain. So as of right now, the only way that we have to access our virtual machine is by an SSH key. Now, a lot of people would prefer to use passwords as well. So I'm going to show you how to set up a password for this account. We do not have access to get into our virtual machine with the root user with a password. So that's good because a lot of times when people do brute force attempts to try to log into your system, they use the root user. Otherwise, they don't know what user to use to log in. So that's good. We're secure on that front with the way that we have things set up right now. So let's run a few commands and set up a password for our account. So the first thing we're going to want to do is, we haven't done this yet, so let's just do an update on the system. And we already belong to the sudo group, but if you were to add your user to the sudo group, you would just do this command right here, and then you put in your username. So that makes sure that we're added to the sudo group, but we were already added anyways, so don't worry about that. These are just some typical things you want to run when you're setting up your server, just to make sure it's done and out of the way. And we don't have Nano installed in the beginning, so we're going to want to install Nano so we can edit our files on the server. Once that's installed, we're going to want to edit a file called etc ssh sshd config. Oh, I forgot to put the Nano in there. Okay, so once we're in this file, there's a few lines we have to add and a few lines we have to change. So if I go down, I'm going to come across this challenge response authentication line here. Go to the end of this, and we're going to change this to yes. Now going all the way down to the bottom, I added these two lines here, so you're going to want to add these to yours. You're going to put match user and then the name of your user on this instance. And then password authentication, yes. Now if you notice up above, I also have password authentication here, and it says no. So I just read a tutorial. It told me to go to the bottom and add these two lines. So I don't know if these are the same. Anyways, this will hook us up. So if I exit out of this, if I save it, let's say if I open up another instance where I just put in the IP address, right? Open it up. Let's say login as. So let's log in. Let's try to log in as root. And it doesn't let us. That's a good thing. We don't want it to let us. The last thing we want is somebody to gain a root access to our server. That's a huge problem. So let's try to log in again. Perfect. Now it's asking for a password, but we haven't created one yet. So let's create one really quick. Over here, the way you set a password, sudo pass wd, and then type in the name of your user. Then you'll be prompted to enter a new password. Enter it twice, and you're in business. So now we've successfully created a password for our account, so we can log in with a password as well from now on. So let's just test it out, make sure it works, that we can log in with a password here. Paste the IP address, open it up. Okay. Boom, and we're in. So now that's how you create a password access for your virtual machine. I know some people are fine without it. I never use passwords because it's easier just to use an SSH key on my machines. But if you want a password, that would be the way that you set it up. Okay, so now we're on to domains, because you need a domain to point to your server. You need an address for people to go to see your website. Otherwise, they would just have to type in your IP address in the browser to be able to see your website. And you don't want that. You want them to have an address to go to, something unique, something that you bought and that belongs to you. So I usually, now I buy my domains through Google Domains. I used to buy them through Bluehost, but I use Google Domains. And the domain that I'm using for this example is going to be mousemachine.com. Up here, when you first visit this site, you can get a new domain. You type your domain in here, something special 123.com. Search for it. It exists. They're typically around $12 a year. They can go from 12, 14, and if somebody already owns it and they're reselling it, it can be very expensive. So you also don't have to get .com. You can get .me, .net, .app, .us, stuff like that. So once you buy your domain, you can go to the My Domains tab, and you'll have your domains listed here. So if I go to Manage, I'm going to want to manage the DNS, because I'm going to want to point the DNS to my server so that anytime someone visits mousemachine.com, it knows what server it's going to serve that website from. So if I go over here, the good thing about buying Google domains with the Google Cloud Platform is you don't have to worry about changing your name servers, because you're already within Google. So these name servers should work just fine. So if I go down, I've already created a couple records here, but I'm going to delete them for the sake of this tutorial and redo them all over again. So the first thing we're going to do is create an A record. An A record is the main record that points to the IP address. You're defining the IP address and you're telling the domain to go to this IP address. So you leave this blank here. We have A record, then we have all these options. We're doing an A record right now, and in here you put your IP address. Once you add that, it automatically saves for you, and at the top it gives you a notification saying that these changes will take effect within the next 48 hours. Google is pretty fast, so when you make a change to your DNS settings, they're usually pretty quick, sometimes within minutes. Sometimes it could take hours. And then the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a CNAME. So a CNAME would be like if you visit www.mousemachine.com, we're going to want to tell it to go to this IP address or this website. So I'll go to CNAME, and in here I want to put the prefix. So I put www, and then I'm going to type my domain name in instead of my IP address, because that's already taken care of with the A record. Add that there. Now that should do it for our basic setup. So technically our domain is set up and ready to go. By the way, that is the only thing that costs money in this tutorial to set up your website. You do need to buy a domain. Domains are not free. At least I don't know where to get domains for free. If you find a place to get a domain for free, great. But if Google Domains, you buy your domain, it's $14 a year, $12 a year, very cheap. So once I buy that, set this up, my DNS settings right now are good to go. My name servers are good to go. A record and CNAME is ready to go. Now let me show you an example if you bought your domain from another party, where you have to change your name servers, where you have to change your and you have to set these settings. So let's check out Bluehost and see what that looks like. So we're going to need to create a zone for our name servers. So let's say that we bought our domain from a third-party website, not Google Domains. Let's say we bought it from Bluehost, for example. And one of the things that we're going to need to change besides the A record and the CNAME is the name servers. We're going to need to point the name servers away from Bluehost or whatever site you bought your domain from and point it to Google. So in Google Cloud Platform, back in our dashboard, to the left in the menu settings, go down to Network Services and Cloud DNS. And when you first access this page, it's going to ask you to enable DNS. So you enable it, and then you'll be presented with this. This will let you create a zone. So if we create a zone, it's going to be public, and I'm just going to name it FKDevYT, just like I'm naming everything else. DNS name, mousemachine.com. This is the name of our site that's going to be pointing. And just leave all these default, create it. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you name servers so that you can edit your name servers on your domain site. So I have Bluehost open here, and this is for my personal website. It points to Cloudflare. I use Cloudflare as a proxy, but so for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to show you what it looks like to change the name servers. Now, if this wasn't Bluehost, if this was something else like domain.com, I have no idea what that looks like, but all I know is I can tell you is that you need to, in your domain, you need to go to the DNS settings. When you're in the DNS settings, you edit, and you're going to do custom. And then in here, you're going to put, let me see what my name servers are. So these are my name servers right here. These 4 strings are my name servers. So in here is where I would put them. 1, 2, and then you can add more. 3 and 4 and so on. There's 4 of them typically. Then you would hit save, and then down here is where you would edit your records. And like I said, this could look different in any domain provider website, but this is just like I showed you on Google Domains. Same exact thing. Right here you need to add an A record with your host record, and then point it to, and then your CNAME, which is going to be your www. So those are the settings that you need to change to point your domain to the right spot. And that should do the trick. We're not actually pointing this domain to our Google Cloud instance. This was just an example to show you of what it looks like to set it up if you didn't buy your domain through Google Domains. Okay? So that's all set. Technically, our domain should be pointing to our IP address. And a good way to check that is if you have a Windows machine, if you open up the command prompt and you ping your domain, it will ping it. And it will read back if it's connecting or not connecting. In this case, we're good to go. That is, in fact, our IP address. That is what we want. We want this to point to that IP address. So technically, this is good. It's pointing to our server. So we have our domain hooked up, ready to go. Now, if we go to our domain in the browser, you're not gonna see anything. Because the server's not set up to show you anything yet. So now that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna install Apache, and we're going to get a directory to serve to the internet. So let's move on. Alright, so here we are, we're logged into our terminal on our server. So we're going to run a few commands here to get Apache up and running. It's very, very, very simple actually. So just run a quick update, make sure we're all up to date. Then we're going to do a sudo apt install Apache 2. Yes. Okay, that set it up. So basically, technically, if I visit mousemachine.com right now, it might show me something. Or maybe not. Yep, it will. So now our server is actually set up to serve over HTTP and HTTPS. And Apache did that for us. So if we visit mousemachine.com, it will show up with a web page. This is the Apache default page in a directory. So technically, anything I put in this directory, if it's an index.html or an index.php, it will pick it up and it will show it to you. It will show it to you on the website. So if I go here in our terminal, and this is going to be located in, let's see, var/www cd.html. Right here, this is the web page that we're actually seeing right now. So if I edit this, see it's a regular HTML page. It has the styling, the meta tags on the top. This is all my styles for the web page. And just to show you that this is what it's serving, this is me. Now if I refresh this, well, it got rid of it, but let's do something. You get the gist. I just made a change and it did something. Let me get rid of that. I'll just cut it short. Refresh, boom. So up here you can see where we cut it short. So we're officially serving our website from that directory. That's how it works when you host a website. It's always usually sitting behind Apache, Nginx, or Node. In this case, we're using Apache. It's very easy to use, and it's pretty fast. So now it's just a matter of putting our React app inside that folder, because our React app, in the end, after you build it, it's essentially compiling all your JavaScript, you have your index.html already, and your JavaScript is able to be served. So let me show you what that looks like in this next step. Okay, so now we're going to want to look at our React app. So let me explain how this works. Essentially, so this is just a create React app out of the box. I just did npx create React app, and it created the base skeleton for React app. And you know, if you've worked with React app before, when you hit npm, when you run npm start in the terminal, it's going to come up with like a default React app page. So we're going to host this for now, but let's assume that this is your project, your portfolio website, just like a website you created for someone. Again, this is not in Node or Express or anything like that. This is just a regular React app. We're not doing any fancy backend connections or anything like that. So this is the website that we're actually going to host, because this tutorial is about hosting a website, if you're not familiar with that. So basically, when this is running in development mode, it's serving you the application, but everything is running off of this index.html file. So in your index.js, you'll always notice React DOM.render is rendering it to an element on this index.html page right here, and that element is root. So when you build this, when you put this into, which I'm going to do right now. So when you run the command npm build or yarn build, we'll run yarn build if it ever works. So when you build this, it builds a production ready site for you, and that puts everything in this build directory. And basically what it's doing is it's compiling all your JavaScript, all your React code, and it's putting it into a JavaScript file or multiple JavaScript files, and it's setting up everything for you. So once you hit build on this, and your application's good to go, there's no errors or anything, it's going to create a directory for you, and this is the directory that needs to sit on your server in that folder, because this index.html file is going to serve your website. So now if I click on this index.html file, you'll see it's not even parsed, but it's got all this stuff in here, and it's pointing to our JavaScript files, which is in here, all these. So it takes care of all the bundling and everything for you. So now you have a React app website, and all we need to do is place it in the directory. And to do that, we're actually going to use GitHub. A lot of people, you could FTP into your server and just drop the files in there. That's one way, but the best way, I think, is with GitHub, because that sets up a workflow. So if you push this up to a repository and you pull it down on your server, it sets up a good workflow for you. So if you need to make changes, you can always rely on pushing and pulling instead of logging into an FTP client and dragging and dropping. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's set up a repository right now with this. So I'm going to go into my GitHub account. Create a new repository. Let's call this AFK Dev YT. It's public. I want to go in the terminal here, and I want to do git add. I want to grab this, paste it in here, set the origin for the GitHub repository, and then do a commit. First commit. Oh, it's git. The first one is always git push -u origin main. No, it's origin. Right. Let's see what I did wrong here. Origin master. I believe that's it. Yep. So that's it. Now we're going to be sending this up. Now let's just refresh here and make sure it came over. And it did. This all came over, but build didn't come over. So what we can do is we can actually build this on the server, which is actually okay, guys, so in our last step, we built the React application, and then we built a production build on our local machine. We saw that that was working. It compiled everything. We didn't get any errors, and it put everything into a build folder. Then we pushed that up to our GitHub repository, and what we're going to do is we're going to pull it down from the repository into our directory, our root directory on the server, so that we display the React application. And when we push this up to our repository for the initial commit, if you notice, it did not include the build directory. So by default, React applications have the build directory in the git ignore file. And there's a reason for that. It's because there's security reasons, and you build your application, you can build your application on the server, so it's not that big of a deal. So that's what we're going to do. So this is the repository. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is pull this down, get this on our server. We want to get it on there. So you go here, we're going to have to clone this. So where are we going to put it? We're going to put it in our document root, where Apache is pointing and saying, hey, show this directory to the world. So we're going to go into var www/html, and this should only have an index.html file in it, which is that file that you see now if you go to your website. But we're going to do, well, first of all, let me note this. I've already changed this, but you will run into this problem. And in when you're working with Linux and the command line, some things to be aware of are directories, permissions, owners of directories. These things are all very, very important because this was not, it didn't belong to me, this directory. So when I tried to clone into it, I got permission denied. So what you're going to want to do is give this, so if I cd out of here, run this. Before this belonged to root, but I changed it to belong to me. And how did I do that? I did sudo ch own, and then a -r for recursive. So I'm going to own this directory and everything that's in it and underneath it, subfolders, all that good stuff. And then I typed in my user, colon, and then the name of the directory. So this makes the directory belong to me. So I can clone into it, I can change it, I can make edits to it, no problem. Now, we're going to cd in there, and I'm going to clone. Oh, I lost my copy. Let me grab that over here. Clone it in. And boom, here it is. It's right on our server. So if you ls, it's right there. cd in there. And right away, this server, it came with Git on it already. As you see, we didn't have to install Git. Sometimes, depending on the server you're using, you might have to install it. And I believe it's as simple as doing a sudo apt get install git, and that would install it for you. But another thing that we're going to need is we're going to need the node version manager. We don't have node or npm on this instance right now. So if we use npm build, it's not going to do anything. If we check for the node version, we're not going to find anything. Those commands don't exist right now. So I have this page open here, and I will include this link in the description. This is the resource that I go to when I'm starting a new server and I need to put node on it. Sorry. I always use NVM, which means Node Version Manager. This web page right here by DigitalOcean shows you how to install Node using NVM. If you follow these instructions, it's very simple. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to curl for the NVM script. That's going to put it on our machine. And if you nano it, this is just to check it out. And it looks legit. That's our install script. But really, we're going to want to bash it. And this installs it on our instance. So now we have Node Version Manager. It instructs us to either log out or log back in, or we can source our profile here. If we do this. And that will refresh our profile so we don't have to log out and log back in. But to test that it's working, you would type in nvm ls remote. And this fires off all of the available Node downloads that you can download. We're going to do the latest LTS version, which is 14.15.3. So we would do an nvm install version 14.15.3. That gets installed. Mine was already installed. I did it for this tutorial to get ready. But yours will install it, no problem, NVM, and we're going to use that version, 14.15.3. and it says now using. Now, how do we check this out? We do a node -v, and that's our version right there. Do we have npm? Yes, we do. npm-v. So that's legit. That works. We're good to go. We could cd out of here. And, oh no, we're going to stay here actually. So we're in our project root right now. We don't have a build directory, so we have nothing to serve right now. If we serve from this public directory, it's not going to work properly. So what are we going to do? First, let's install all of our dependencies. And this is going to install React scripts for our project, which gives us the ability to build the production package. And while this is actually installing everything, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Turn on those bell notifications so that you can be one of the first people to see the new content that comes out. I've been more active on my channel lately, and I plan on releasing content regularly. Still newer to this to YouTube, but I plan on taking this to a far place. So videos are gonna get better, content's gonna get better, the channel's gonna be more fun over time. So right now it's done downloading our packages. We can do an npm build. Oh, sorry, npm run build. This is going to build our production project. This is our React application. This is the last, well, not the last step, but we are there. This is almost the last step. So that's done. Excuse me, that is finished. We've downloaded. We have our, let's see, boom. We have a build directory in here. If you cd into build, an ls, we have our index.html right here. We have our JavaScript and this static stuff. So this is ready. It's a project ready to go right now. We just need to serve it up. And we need to change an Apache configuration because right now, Apache is looking here at /var/ww/html. And in the root of this, we still have our index.html for the default Apache page that you see right now. And we don't want that. We want to go further. We want to go into the project and into the build directory. So we have to change a setting for that. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So for Apache settings, you want to cd into /etc sorry about that. etc/Apache2 ls here, and we're going to want to go into sites available, and we're going to want to edit the 000 default.conf. Right away we're in the right spot because you can see the document root here. This is the root directory that is being served to the internet right now. So this needs to change. And how? We need to go into our project. So go into your project. And one more step, we need to go into the build directory. At the end of the day, we're serving the index.html file inside of the build directory. So this will put us where we need to be. So if I exit this and save it, we're going to want to enable it. Right now it's already enabled, but this is what I do. If you do a sudo a2, I'm going to take it down. This is actually going to disable it right now. This site 000 default.conf, and then it's going to tell us to reload Apache. Okay, so now we're going to want to re-enable it with the new settings. So we're going to go here, and instead of this site, we're going to change this to end site. Boom. It's going to tell us to reload Apache again. Reload Apache. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is it's done. Right now, if we visit our URL, we are going to see our website. So let's check it out. And there you have it. You guys have successfully hosted a React application online. This tutorial is geared towards people I know, like for me in the beginning when I was learning all this stuff, especially server configurations and hosting stuff. Oh, it was so hard. I only knew how to do stuff through like Bluehost, where you like put your folders in a public HTML folder and hope for the best. But this gives you more in-depth details on how to maneuver around the server and actually how all this stuff works. Because at the end of the day, a server is basically a directory with an index.html or an index.php file in it that is showing you your application or your website. That's all it is. So I hope that you got a lot of value from this video, and that you know how to host your own, spin up your own server and host your own website or web application now. Get started to go back through this tutorial and do it on your own. Maybe host your portfolio site. Use Google's free server stuff. I know AWS has free servers too. And then the only thing that costs money is the domain. You don't even need a domain if you don't want people typing in your IP address to get to your website, you're gonna want to get a domain, and they're cheap, so it's no big deal. Anyway, subscribe and thank you, and like this video if you got value from it. Share it with your friends. Thank you. Peace.